Center. We have Mary Ramaya here and Junior Binno. Welcome to Keeping Up with the Chaldeans. We're going to highlight the Chaldean Cultural Center on an episode of Keeping Up with the Chaldeans, and Mary was gracious enough to offer to give us a tour and then sit down and give us a little more background on it and what we can all do to help bring our culture alive.
So I want to welcome you to the Chaldean Cultural Center. The center, this is a boutique museum, and the Cultural Center is more than the museum. We do programming, but probably our crown jewel is the museum itself. And it officially opened in September of 2017. And before we actually step into the museum, above the main entrance, there's a sculpture which was done by one of our local Chaldean artists. So we want to highlight the work of some of our artists when we can. It says, so it's the Lion of Babylon, and then in English, obviously, Chaldean Cultural Center, and above the lion is Chaldean Cultural Center in Aramaic. So we're going to step into the museum, and the first gallery is ancient Mesopotamia.
Which side do you want to start on?
Well, first of all, this is the largest of the 5 galleries. And this is a boutique museum. It's about 1,800 square feet. And when you walk into each gallery, there's a date on the floor which states what time in history you're walking into this gallery. So for ancient Mesopotamia, the date is 3300 BC. So we're over 5,000 years ago, because the Chaldeans go back that long and more. And even the environment of each gallery is indicative of the gallery itself. For example, you are walking on a replica of Jerusalem stone. So this is a kind of stone that you would find in the Middle East, including Iraq. Even the colored tile around the perimeter of the museum was added, one as a decorative element just to break up the Jerusalem stone, but the colors were chosen, and the colors are cobalt blue, olive green, and gold, because those are the colors of ancient Babylon.
Nice.
Even the drapery was chosen to be sheer, so that cars passing on Walnut Lake Road in the evening, if there are lights on and there's maybe a tour going on and they see some movement, just for interest. But the color was chosen so that if there's movement of the drapery, maybe from heat or air conditioning, is to represent the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Oh, wow. So there's really a lot of subtlety in the museum, as well as in all of Shenandoah, with color schemes and architectural elements that really throw back to to our heritage of being from ancient Babylon.
That's amazing.
In this gallery, Ancient Mesopotamia, we cover 4 empires: the Sumerian Empire, the Babylonian, the Assyrian, and the Neo-Babylonian. The Sumerian Empire was the earliest, and it was in what is today southern Iraq. This is a map of ancient Mesopotamia, and the Sumerian Empire, its capital city was the city of Ur. And the Sumerians are famous for many things. One is living in a society instead of being nomadic people and everyone sort of on their own. They lived in cities, and they had a ruler, and we have a mock-up of what the ancient city of Ur would have looked like. It was a walled city. The townspeople were on the outside of the city, inside the ziggurat, inside the wall and beyond the wall. You have a ziggurat that served many purposes. First of all, at the very height was a temple to the god or goddess of the city. The ancient Babylonians were polytheistic, believing in many gods. It was also the place where the ruler of the city lived, and it could be a place where an army could walk around the different levels on the different steps of the ziggurat and see if an invading army was approaching them. Really, medieval castles got some of their ideas of this, of building like a castle with a moat and housing the lord of the manor and their personal army, really from the ancient Sumerians. And the Sumerians were also famous for beginning of writing, and their writing is cuneiform writing. And this exhibit explains how cuneiform began as really pictures. There might be like a symbol representing a cow or a sheep, and then they started pictures, and those symbols started to become letters. I mean, this took time. But the ancient Sumerians were famous for cuneiform writing, so we have much to give them credit. One of the rulers of ancient Sumeria was a woman whose name was Queen Puabi, and her tomb was excavated by archaeologists from the University of Pennsylvania. So from the University of Pennsylvania, we purchased replicas of some of her jewelry. Everything on the south wall of this ancient gallery are replicas, authentic because they're made from the original.
Sure.
But on the north wall, all of those items are actual artifacts that we bought from antiquity dealers around the world.
Okay.
So like those two necklaces actually come from 1st century before Christ, and were bought from antiquity dealers. And we have their certificates of authenticity. The Sumerians were conquered by the Babylonians. And the Babylonians moved the capital from Ur to the city of Babylon, which is just south of modern-day Baghdad. And probably the Babylonian ruler that we are most familiar with is Hammurabi. And what Hammurabi was noted for was codifying the laws that were in existence at his time. He didn't create all these laws, but he categorized them so that all the criminal laws were together, all the civil laws were together, all the laws dealing with family and marriage and children and adoption were together.
And those are written in there?
Cuneiform writing.
Cuneiform.
So you're looking, first of all, we bought this from the Louvre. This is an authentic replica. And I love saying that because it's an oxymoron.
Yeah.
How can it be a
Authentic,
replica if it's authentic,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But anyways, that's one of my, like jumbo shrimp. Anyways, so this is from the Louvre, and the Louvre has the original one. And any other stele or code of laws you see anywhere else in the world outside of the Louvre in Paris is exactly what we have here. And what the Louvre did is, and many museums do this, it's a way for them to make money. They take their famous artifacts and cast it and make a cast of it and then sell replicas to museums around the world.
Nice.
And so we, if you look closely, every single rectangle is a law. Some laws are 2 lines, and some laws are 1 line, some laws are 3 lines.
What's some of the red dots represent on here?
So the red dots we added, I don't want you to think Hammurabi was into color coding, but we are. So we had our media producer activate 8 laws, 4 on the front of the stele and 4 on the back. So Junior, if you touch a red dot,
Sure.
what you see on the screen is that if you were to say these words phonetically, you would be speaking Akkadian, which is an ancient Semitic language that Aramaic, Arabic, and Hebrew come from. Then it tells you the law, in English, obviously.
Yeah.
And then it'll tell you where on the stele that law is located.
Wow.
Anthony, touch the upper left corner. We even got
that's
this to
cool.
rotate.
Whoa.
Touch the third button down. I always go for that one.
All right.
So there are 4 more laws on the back. Altogether, there are 282 laws. We couldn't activate every single one of them. And this, again, would be Acadian, what the law is. And this goes back to an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth.
Yeah.
And so these are Hammurabi's code. This was in the center square. This would be down like at Hart Plaza, in Detroit. So people, if they could read the cuneiform writing, certainly the scribes and the more educated people could, would know what the laws are and what the punishment would be for violating the law. We had the fabricator, the company that actually built the museum is from Bowling Green and Cincinnati, Ohio. And we had them photograph part of the stele and make this background wallpaper. And so what you're looking at is cuneiform writing taken right off of the stele, enlarged. So you're actually seeing cuneiform writing.
Wow.
So the Babylonians were then defeated by the Assyrians. So you have empires rising and falling. And the Assyrians moved the capital from Babylon, and they were from northern Mesopotamia, and the capital then moved to Nineveh. And Nineveh is just outside of the modern city of Mosul, and it's in the Nineveh plain that the Chaldeans come from. That's where our villages are located. And the Assyrians were famous for being warriors, and they had their empire. And then they were conquered by the Neo-Babylonians. And the most famous Neo-Babylonian ruler was Nebuchadnezzar. The Neo-Babylonian Empire is the Chaldean Empire. So Nebuchadnezzar was actually a Chaldean king. And what he is famous for, amongst other things, is building the processional way and into the walled city of Babylon. He moved the capital from Nineveh, which was the Assyrian capital. He conquered them, and then the capital came back down to Babylon. And there are, I think, 7 gates. I'm not sure about that, but there are multiple gates that go into this walled city of Babylon. But one of the most famous ones is the Ishtar Gate. And he built this processional way so that when his conquering army in victory would march in procession along the processional way, or even during parades. Sometimes there were parades worshiping particular gods or goddesses through the Ishtar Gate into the city. By the time of Nebuchadnezzar, which is the 6th century before Christ, the Mesopotamians had already traveled to what today would be like Pakistan and Afghanistan, India, and had brought back dyes of different colors like the cobalt blue and the golds. And he started incorporating them into their building structure so that you had colored bricks. Like if you look at the Ishtar Gate, you have the blues and the greens and the golds. Yep. He had dragons and horned bulls and lions as part of the decoration on the processional way in the Ishtar Gate. It was artistic. That was definitely one thing that he was after. But also, they would put torches inside the bricks, built into the bricks. And if there was ever an invading army marching towards the city of Babylon, they would light the torches at night, and the flickering of the torches made it look as if these animals were moving.
Wow.
And so an invading army was afraid to attack because they'd be eaten by dragons and bulls and lions. And I want to say, and bears, oh my, I shouldn't, but I'm sorry. And that gave the townspeople time to get ready for battle. In the morning, when the enemy realized that they had been scammed, that had given the people time to get ready for battle, and the Neo-Babylonians, would hopefully stay victorious. This is a replica of the Ishtar Gate.
Mm-hmm.
So when you leave the ancient gallery and go into the Faith and Church Gallery, you are walking under a replica of the Ishtar Gate. And
It's the aerial view of the.
this is an aerial view of the city of the processional way. And we have different photographs just from the Neo-Babylonian Empire about the Hanging Gardens of Babylon.
That's an actual picture right there of it, or
No,
is that just
actually, no, it was a mock-up.
Mhm.
There was a husband and wife German documentary team
Yep.
who built a replica of the city of Babylon. So that's a photograph from the replica they built. And it was from them that we bought a still photograph to make this mural of the processional way, so that when somebody first comes into the museum,
Yep.
it's as if they're walking, as they come along the passage here, as if they're walking right into the processional way.
Wow.
So we tried to make it an immersive environment.
Sure.
Even these three building structures, and I like mentioning this because so many of our Chaldeans are real estate developers and into construction, that you actually see three different styles of construction, which is true of the ancient Mesopotamians. They used to take just mud, clay, where the Tigris and Euphrates come together, and make uneven sizes and lay the mud out in clumps and to form bricks, but uneven bricks. And they would harden, and they would make their buildings made out of dried clay. But again, uneven sizes.
Yeah.
By the time you get to the Babylonians, they did the same thing, drying out the clay, but the bricks now are uniform in size, and then they created a herringbone pattern so that the buildings would actually be stronger. By the time you get to the Neo-Babylonians, Nebuchadnezzar, his father, and the Nebuchadnezzar, they had, again, uniform-sized bricks, but they were able to add color and decoration to the bricks so that the cities were actually beautified and not just utilitarian.
Right. Well, let's step through into 33 AD.
33 AD, we are now entering the Faith and Church Gallery.
All right.
The date of 33 AD is what we commonly use as the time of the crucifixion of Christ. And again, for the environment, in this gallery, the lighting is a little bit subdued, and we created an arch in the ceiling to give this feeling of a sacred space like you would have in the church.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
That is a Last Supper sculpture, and there's actually a story behind that. About 5 months before the museum was finished, I got a call from the architects from New York, and they said, that we have nothing on the wall going from the Faith and Church Gallery into the Village Gallery. Let's add a decorative element. And they remembered that we had a picture of this Last Supper sculpture. A lot of Chaldeans have given us pictures of their families in the villages and what things have looked like back, in the 1900s and so forth. So above the main church, in my understanding, in Tel Kerpe, or Tel Kerf in Arabic, Tel Kerpa in Aramaic, or Surah, where most of the original Detroit Chaldeans came from that village, the main church was Sacred Heart Church. And in Sacred Heart Church, above the main altar, was a Last Supper sculpture. And so we decided I sent a picture of that to the company in Ohio. They fabricated a miniature of it. And our goal was so that like my parents, many of the original pioneers are now deceased, but people that sort of grew up in Telcapa before, and then came to America, would remember this and it would be a way of honoring them and thanking them, and something familiar to them.
Mm-hmm.
When ISIS overtook Mosul, that whole Nineveh Plain area, Sacred Heart Church itself was not destroyed. My understanding, it became sort of a command headquarters for ISIS. But they destroyed all the iconography in it, all the statues, the crosses, the altar, totally desecrated, including this Last Supper sculpture. Since ISIS has been driven out, there have been some Chaldeans who have come here and photographed that with the hope of when that church is rebuilt, they would like to restore the sculpture. So what was the copy has now become the original.
Yeah.
Underneath that, is that Aramaic?
It's Arabic. I asked
Arabic,
that too.
okay.
And it's Arabic, and it's Christ eating with his apostles before his death.
Okay.
But it's the last,
So 1890s, something a little more representative of our time.
I would say just
Okay.
this. This is a big piece
okay.
of our old generation.
All right, let's hear it.
All right, this is a replica of a baptismal font from a church in Mosul, a Chaldean Catholic church in Mosul called Mar Shamoun. And we would say St. Peter's, because Shamoun is Simon and Simon is Simon Peter. And the church was built around the 11th century. This baptismal font is from the 19th century, the 1800s. And I was given a picture book of churches, Catholic churches in Mosul. And one of them, we had this picture, and we thought, wouldn't it be great if we did a replica of the baptismal font? We actually, amongst the board of directors, actually had a discussion. Do we make it like it originally would have looked, or like it looks now?
Yeah.
Well, now before ISIS.
Right.
And so we decided with the way it was looking in that book. And so again, it's possible some of the church Chaldeans were baptized in the original baptismal font. This east wall talks about the conversion of Chaldeans to Christianity by St. Thomas the Apostle. So we were amongst the earliest converts to Christianity right during the apostolic age. And then it mentions Mara Day and Mar Mari, and the development of the Church of the East, the Chaldean Catholic Church of the East. And there was, this is just the Our Father written in Aramaic, like the monks in the monasteries in the Nineveh Plain would have written it. And it talks about the Church of the East. At one time, we followed the Nestorian teaching regarding Mary not being the mother of the divine nature of Christ. But anyways, in the 1500s, under Pope Julius, we reunited with the Catholic Church. So we were definitely amongst the very first Christians, still Christian, left the Catholic Church, and then returned to the Catholic Church. And thank goodness.
Yeah.
And here are vestments that Bishop Ibrahim had given us, and this is an interactive showing a Chaldean baptism, dedication of St. George Church in Shelby Township, and a Chaldean wedding.
Nice.
We are leaving the Faith and Church Gallery. The date on the floor is 1890, and we are now in the Nineveh Plain. So this is the village gallery. And we don't specify any particular village. There are over 120 villages. Telcapa or Telcaf was one of the largest. or was the largest, is my understanding. And again, it's where the first of the Chaldeans to come to America were from Tulcapra. But there's Alcosh, there's Batnaya, Tescopa, a lot of villages. And
Mary, those bracelets and those earrings remind me of my grandma and mom and all. That's like a lot of them what they wore and come back from home.
yeah,
Looks so real.
we had, again, a lot of pictures that people gave us.
Yeah.
And so we tried to make the clothing as authentic as possible. And I even went to a local jewelry store and looked for Ferrada, look
Yeah.
for the gold
Yeah, for that, yeah.
bangle. And
Yeah.
I have like some jewelry that my in-laws have given me that have these turquoise stones,
Yep.
Yeah.
earrings
Yeah.
and rings.
Turquoise
There's
carpet,
that Anna,
turquoise
too,
piece.
that
Yeah.
everybody used to wear.
Yeah.
The turquoise that she's sitting on, and along with her earring, has that color sequence again too.
And a lot of the women had long hair and they would braid their hair.
Yeah.
In fact, my mother's passport picture, she came in 1937, her hair is in braids. We have a tenor, so she's in her inner courtyard making bread. And there's a tenor or tenora where she'll bake the bread.
It's a clay
there.
oven, right? That's what it was, like a clay oven for them.
Yes, yeah, a clay oven.
Yeah.
And then we even show some of the Chaldean food like
Yeah.
Yeah,
Where's that? Cadi and Timon.
Cadi and,
One of my
dolma.
favorites, dolma.
And on this side, we have a man in the wheat fields. And actually, I have to give credit to Hanashina. He gave us this costume for, almost everything in this gallery is from Chaldeans that they gave us when they came, that they brought with them when they came to America. And so because our people were farmers, I mean, depending on how far north the village was, some had wheat and barley, some had melons and vegetables and fruit. And we had the company make a wheat field. And so the gentleman, showing a Chaldean gentleman, has a bundle of like clothing, and he's going to like go to another village and maybe barter selling clothing that his wife may have crocheted.
Oh, wow.
And then in return bring back maybe fruits or vegetables or items that another village has that maybe his own village did not have.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you look through the window of this house, you cannot actually go inside the house. We have a technique called Pepper's Ghost. It's really a hologram,
There she is. There she is.
and we show 10 different scenes of just daily life in a village home. We have a mother and a father, a grandmother and a grandfather, and a boy and a girl. And so like the mother is maybe teaching her daughter how to pray. A grandfather is teaching his grandson how to shoot slingshot. See, like we have a bird here.
Oh, I didn't see that. What is that?
Yeah, because they would trap birds.
We used to use those here.
Did you really?
My dad brought those home here in the States. We used to catch birds with those in Bloomfield Hills.
I love it. And that slingshot is for real. I mean, that trap is for real.
Yeah,
The bird is not, but
The trap, we've
is.
used those traps.
How does those work? How do they work?
You open them up, see that end right there?
Yeah, that wooden end.
The wooden end
Yeah.
is on a string in the middle. It comes up and over. When you open
yeah.
it, you put it, and there's a
Food or something. For them?
Like a
yeah,
seed.
a seed, yeah,
something.
a grain or whatever,
Yep.
and you put it in there, and it locks it, and then you put a cheese on top of it, and then or bread on top of it. When they go to get the bread, the thing slips over. This just
Was it more of a sport, or you ate birds?
it's for fun.
Yeah.
Yeah,
like
it's for fun,
hunting.
kids. Yeah, it was a trap, bird trap.
Yeah.
We used to have a cage also, so the traps were worn out. So you took the birds and we put them in the cage. We
Yeah.
had wild birds as
Yeah.
pets for a minute.
Yeah.
And then my mom would let them go, and she'd say, "Oh, they got away. I don't know how they got away."
You came home from school one day
Yeah,
and all
it was-
the
birds were gone.
and they
Yeah.
ended up in an Alfred Hitchcock movie.
Yeah.
So every item that's displayed in the different videos, when the video turns off, a light goes on those items in the house, those spotlights go off and a new video comes up. So it's 10 different scenes. But all those items are actually from Chaldeans who gave them to us.
1933, now we're getting into...
Now this is the Immigration Journey to America Gallery.
Wow.
The year is 1933. And I picked that year because by 1933, there were Chaldeans fully established with businesses in Detroit. The Chaldeans, the first Chaldean that we can document who came to America was named Zaya Atullah, and he came in 1889, and he went to Philadelphia, worked in a hotel, went to Baghdad and opened up a hotel. So all you Chaldean hotel owners, you're part of a long history
Yeah.
that goes back to 1889.
And you can thank the Atlas.
And by 1910, there were Chaldeans here. This is a picture of some Niger men who were here in the U.S. And all of these documents are from different immigration periods. This is the earliest that we documented, but this is Tom George, Mike George's dad, who owned Melody Farms Dairy. That was his original passport, and his name was Tobia Judju Lucia.
Mm-hmm.
And when a lot of the immigrants went through Ellis Island, and then sometimes either they changed their names or the immigration officer who processed them changed their names. So he became Tom George, although his last name was really Lucia or Lucia. Mm-hmm. And then he wrote to all of his brothers and sisters, if you come to America, use the name of George. So because I'm going to, because he would petition for them under his American
legal name. Yeah.
Yes. And one of these documents even says that this person was born in Mesopotamia. One of these documents mentions the United Kingdom, because after World War I, Iraq was, after the fall of the Ottoman Empire, Iraq became a protectorate of England. And so it was just interesting collecting documents that show different time periods. The Kingdom of Iraq, the Republic of Iraq. These medals were given to us by Don Casa. By the time of World War II, there were definitely established families, and we had either American-born or Chaldeans who came as children, but who as adults fought in World War II. And Don Casa was in the U.S. Army and gave us his Army medals, and he was in Europe when the war ended. He was in Germany and helped liberate, his division liberated one of the concentration camps. So what you have in the background is hard to see, is a picture of Detroit
yeah.
in the 1930s. So you see the Detroit River with the freighter.
Mm-hmm.
This is what was going on in Detroit. This is what was going on in Baghdad in the 1930s. So we got an image of Baghdad from that same time period, showing images of people from Faye Kasaki as a high pole vaulter.
That's big time. That's Mike Kasaki's dad.
No way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. Amazing.
And then
They were saying he was a great athlete, basketball player too. Yeah.
And so the Chaldeans, when they came to America, came to Detroit. Like there were other immigrant groups like the Irish that wherever they landed, whether it was Boston or New York, that's where they stayed. Mm-hmm. The Chaldeans came to Detroit, but they still would have gone through Ellis Island in New York or Boston as a port of entry. So we think that there are three reasons why Detroit. One was Ford Motor Company was advertising on Ellis Island that if you come to Detroit, you'll be paid $5 a day if you work in the factories. So they were generally young men who were single, and they thought, well, we could always make a living, if we go to Detroit. another reason is that already in Detroit were Lebanese and Syrians, and they had come in at the turn of the 20th century. And so the Chaldeans knew that there were people from these other countries who spoke Arabic. So if they came to Detroit, even though they weren't Chaldeans, they could communicate with these Lebanese and Syrians in the Arabic language. They were from the same part of the world. There was a comfort level there. Also by 1929, 1930, both Detroit-Windsor Tunnel and the Ambassador Bridge had been built. So that if, let's say, brothers were traveling together to come to America and they're at Ellis Island, wherever, and maybe one person's document was an order, or maybe one of the brothers or a cousin had a physical ailment and wasn't allowed into the U.S. and somebody else was, Canada had a more lenient immigration policy. It's physically a bigger country than the U.S. And so someone could go to Canada, one to the U.S. You live in Windsor, you live in Detroit, you could visit each other. And so we did have Chaldeans living in the Windsor area, but I think most of them eventually immigrated. There were some Chaldeans who went to work for a Syrian grocery store owner. And they learned the grocery business through the Syrian people, but the grocery business was comfortable for them because they were farmers and they already knew produce and grains and were used to bartering. So going to the Eastern market and talking to farmers and asking for 5 bushels of beans and how much they're going to pay for them was already part of their nature. So this is a 1933 Chaldean-owned Detroit grocery store.
What store was it?
Okay, we modeled it after the store of Jack Nager. But we don't, and Jack Nager had a store, it was Jack and Aziz Nager, had a store on Woodward Avenue. We did not, and I'm trying to remember the name. Anyways, okay. We didn't want to name any person's particular store. We're not, okay. And so we just called it Woodward Market.
Okay.
And just generic. It's just a generic store.
Yep.
And I actually wrote to General Foods in Minneapolis and asked them to send me high-resolution images of what their canned goods and their boxes look like from the third. Yes. And
You've done a lot of work here. You poured your heart into this place.
Yes.
It's a beautiful thing. Thank you very much.
These aren't new names. That's the thing. She went deep to be able to get all this stuff. Look at that.
I even went to, well, I didn't do this on purpose. I happened to be in downtown Milford shopping, and I found an antique radio, and it's actually playing a Detroit Tiger baseball game from the 1930s.
Wow.
Our media producer contacted WWJ Radio, and at that time, that was the radio station the games were on. And I remember even this in my dad's store, because growing up Chaldean, you had to work in your dad's store.
Of course you did.
So you either went off to college, got married,
Yeah.
or took over the store,
Yeah.
whatever came first. And so they would have the radio on so that the customers could listen to a ball game. So we got a tape from WWJ Radio, had to get permission from Major League Baseball to actually play this. Wow. So you actually will hear a part of a snippet of a Detroit Tiger baseball game.
That's amazing.
All of these items, the Toledo scale, the cash register, the adding machine, even with the paper still in it. This is Modorga Diku. That was his actual ledger where he kept track of all his customers and how much money he took in every day. His family donated some of the pages to us. I don't know if you remember the old.
Do I? Oh yeah, my mom. That's how we keep in touch.
That's not the 1930s. That's a little bit later.
Yep.
Yeah.
But we even went on eBay. I went to a flea market sales looking for old things from the 1930s, as authentic as we could get.
These are our stores.
Very nice.
This is, as we're leaving the Journey to America gallery, we highlight Chaldeans who came to America later after the 1960s, which was the biggest influx of Chaldeans to America.
Yeah.
Many of these people came from Baghdad or Mosul or Basra, no longer necessarily from the villages. And these are Chaldeans who were professionals, college educated in Iraq, came to America, and then had to get licensed here to practice.
Gotcha.
And like this woman, a pediatrician, went through 3 residencies. She graduated from the University of Baghdad Medical School, did her residency in Iraq. She and her husband moved to England, thought that they would live in England, did a residency in England. After her children were born, they decided to come to America, or sometime around that time they came to America. She had to do a 3rd residency to be able to practice. So she went through Beaumont Hospital to practice. So, you know, our people have paid their
Pay their dues.
Yeah.
You know, we didn't talk about this, but so people know, you have the monitors next to it, and then you still have some of the red dots that are in here as well too.
Right.
That's to be able to do what? That gives you more information on these particular people.
So this one, you don't hear it overhead.
Yep.
You put it to your ear, you press a red dot.
This is my picture on my Lebanese passport. That's my high school picture.
But I want to show you, where's another red dot?
This is Ben.
Okay, wait a minute. I want to find a red dot.
This is my husband, Sidki Elias Sada. He's from
The point is that you actually sometimes will see that person
when we came
actually speaking
Oh,
through
wow.
her passport.
wow.
with 3 children.
And again, it was a
No
technique that our
English.
media producer wanted, where
Hard on the
each
children.
red dot is a different part of her immigration
Yeah.
story.
Wow, very
Yeah.
cool.
But when she talks about her own immigrate, you know, like her coming,
You bring it to modern
Um,
day with her picture. That's beautiful.
yes,
We stepped over the stepping stones that
you see
That's
her
not to-
actually
Yeah.
talking.
in front
Yeah.
of the
And that's what they do on the other ones too, on the other side.
Yeah, all
too,
the
so it's-
others. There are 4 of these.
That's cool.
This is a wall of 75 photos, and we can add to it. So we tell families when we give tours or organizations, give us pictures. Just give us your family pictures. These are Chaldeans in America, because we are now in America. So the earliest pictures we could get of the Chaldeans in America are black and white. You know, from the 30s, 40s, 50s. You see even the king of Iraq, obviously before he was assassinated with the
Whoops.
governor at that time. And as we get into more modern times, the pictures are in black and white. And we tell people, you know, give us your family pictures or your organization, your events important. We still have people, Chaldeans in the military still today,
Yeah.
and so forth.
Okay.
This is a today gallery. This does not have a date on the floor because it's today.
It's happening now.
And so there's a video that'll come on. It plays for 22 minutes, and it's different. It's about 35, 40 people, different ages, boys, girls, men, women, talking about what it means to be a Chaldean. On this wall, we honor our pioneers, the first of the Chaldeans to come to America, who were here before the start of World War II, and fully established with either American-born children or children who were young, maybe a year or 2 or 5 years old, but brought up here. And this is our past. We don't say who they are because we don't want them to think they're more important than anyone else, but families gave us pictures, and when we enlarged it, they worked. Other pictures were old or torn or
Right.
pixelated
Yeah.
when we enlarged them. But we do have a book of who each person is and a short biography. Then I wrote to all of the Chaldean churches in our diocese here, like Mother of God, St. Thomas, St. George, and asked for the name of a boy or a girl. I said, like Saint Mother of God, I want a name of a 7-year-old girl. I may have told St. Thomas, give me a 10-year-old boy. I mean, I forgot. I'd have to go through my letters. We contacted the parents, brought the children here, and had them professionally photographed. And then, so we created, and including 2 children from Chicago, because there were 2, when I did this, 2 Chaldean churches in Chicago. And so these are today's children, from each one from a different parish. And again, we don't say who they are, we just, this is our future. So our past and our future are looking at each other. So, you know, we've been here, you know, at least 5, 6, we've been here over 120 years now.
A lot of people don't know.
Well, yeah, 120 years at least. And so, you know, we're about 6 generations here in America. And then again, we also did a book of who the children are, specifically if anybody wanted to know.
That's awesome.
And so it says our future for this exhibit. You see one of the people talking in the video.
Many years later, and art, frescoes, plants,
Nice.
all of those.
And
things
as you
create
leave the
a
museum,
beautiful living environment. I think it was very unique for the time. and I think
it says on the wall, our story continues. And when I give tours, especially for non-Chaldeans, I say, we've been around over 5,000 years. We're going to be around another 5,000 years. Come back,
Yep.
and we'll be happy to give you another tour.
Nice.
Can we, do you have a gift shop as well too?
Yes.
If we can let the viewers see that as well. That way they get some cool things that you guys offer.
This is our office, and again, the Chaldean Cultural Center is more than just the museum, although the museum is the highlight. So we have a gift shop, so if people want to come in and buy items, some books, one of the books we published ourselves, the book on the Chaldeans. Others are like some of the cookbooks, like Ma Basima or Julie Nager's cookbook, or is it Samira Chola?
Yep.
I know the last name is Chola,
Yep,
but for
Samira's.
Samira.
Yep.
Even the Chaldean for kids that like Margaret Shamoon and Melody put together.
Yep, that's in that corner right there.
And note cards, and I have some on the table when we talk, I'll show you. And we can have a meeting in here, and we do lectures in here or presentations. Sometimes I'll do a presentation before they go into the museum and then go into the museum. We've had educators here, we've had medical professionals here, we've had law enforcement here, just answering their questions that they may have about Chaldeans, because they have to be trained in cultural diversity,
Sure.
not just with the Chaldean population, but we are a major population in Southeast Michigan. So this is our office, it's our gift shop, it's our lecture room, it's a library of books, and some in English, some in Arabic, some in Aramaic,
Okay.
that have been donated to us, or the church has given us, that people can take out and
Gotcha.
so forth.
All right, so thanks for the tour. Let's go sit down and have a conversation and see what our audience can do for the driving culture.